Christ and Culture. My name is Jeff Short, and today we're going to be going back over the Methodist Church upcoming split that's supposed to happen in May, and we're going to talk about some of the issues, and we're going to see how different this debate has been from other issues because of the coverage is so biased. We have a culture right now that is secular. It's relativistic. In other words, in morality and spirituality, anything goes. Everyone is arguing some other different viewpoint, and it's all just jumbled together. And so the conclusion of our secular age is, well, there really is no truth. There really is no morality. It's all relativism, and it's basically just up to a power play. If you're wanting your way, you're going to have to get other people to coalesce and come together politically and then overpower the political opposition. That's what it comes down to. And in terms of philosophy, if you remember, there was a guy named Nietzsche in the 19th century. He was a philosopher. He's an atheist. And his teaching was that since he didn't believe in God, he didn't believe in morality, he didn't believe in absolutes, he didn't believe in meaning and purpose, the only thing left is the will to power. And so we're seeing a secular society go in that direction with its will to power. So you see this happening right within the United Methodist Church. You have a secular church. This is the United Methodist Church, a huge denomination in the United States and around the world, and it is being infiltrated by secularists, liberals, who do not believe the gospel, who do not believe the Bible. They say they believe the Bible, but they don't believe the Bible is the Word of God, authoritative, the guide and standard for living. They believe the Bible is some kind of a religious book where you can pull parts and pieces together to create a sermon on Sunday, but you're basically looking to culture, you're looking to the academia, you're looking to science, you're looking to the authority spheres of the modern world to tell you what to do, and the Bible is just there to sort of inspire you to do what the secular culture has already come to the conclusion of doing. So this is the Methodist Church today. Sold out its birthright, has walked away from anything John Wesley would have ever approved. This is a church denomination that is just going down the tubes, and it doesn't even see that it's going down the tube. So we're going to look at an article, a rather biased article, dealing with this split that's coming up in May, where you're going to have a split between the liberals and the conservatives. Those who follow the Bible, the conservatives, and those, follow the Bible more closely, and then the liberals who have basically written off the Bible, and they're embracing all of the left-wing Democratic talking points: abortion, gay, so-called gay marriage, so-called gay rights, ordination of homosexuals, the whole LGBT agenda they've embraced. And so they're going to be basically, this is a way that the liberals can get rid of the conservatives in the church. And so we're going to read an article that's really biased, and I'll point that out when I talk about the article. But let's jump in and get to some of the issues here. Again, you have to really look closely as to what is being said here, because if you don't analyze it very closely, you're going to think that the liberals are high-minded and good motivation and taking the high moral road, and they're very loving and kind. But you have to get behind their words and find out what's actually being said. And once you do, you say, this is awful. Okay, so let's jump into the article. This is an article by Elizabeth Redden. It's found in Inside Higher Education, and it's called A Way Out of Impasse Over LGBT Issues, ? A proposed split in the United Methodist Church could be good news for colleges that struggled with whether to retain their church affiliation following the adoption of anti-LGBT policies. So what she's talking about in a rather biased and one-sided way, but you wouldn't know it. You have to understand the context. When she's talking about anti-LGBT policy, she's talking about regular Christianity as it has been taught for thousands of years. That's what she's talking about. And what she's saying here, it would be good news for colleges in the United Methodist orbit. There are lots and lots of colleges in the United States that are affiliated with the United Methodist Church in one form or another. And they're all having to deal with this whole LGBTQ plus revolution, the perversity, the sexual deviancy issue. And they're struggling because the overwhelming culture, the secular world, the population of our country, the 325 million people now that are in the United States, are being tutelaged and schooled by the secularist groups and the government and the institutions to accept all kinds of sexual perversity. And the colleges that are affiliated with the United Methodist Church are struggling because they want to be hip and cool and they want to be respected in the eyes of the secular world. And they're struggling as to what to do, because if you take the biblical Christian position, you will be ostracized and marginalized and rejected from a place at the table in secular society. So these colleges are saying, what do we do now? We want to be popular with the culture. We want to be in good standing with our peers in academia. So what do? We're affiliated with a church, United Methodist Church, that still embraces the biblical view of man and woman marriage and still rejects the sexual perversity of homosexuality. So the official United Methodist Church position right now on homosexuality is that it's a sin and that it is not legitimate to ordain homosexuals. It's not legitimate to marry so-called gay couples. And so that's the official Methodist Church position. And it's that official position that the liberals in the United States and in Europe can't abide by. Even though they want the conservatives to abide by their decisions whenever they happen to be on the winning side of a vote, they don't want to abide by the decisions of the conservatives when they're on the wrong side of the vote. And so the LGBTQ lobby in the United Methodist Church just will not accept the fact that they cannot get their way. So they're going to split the church. And they've come up with a proposal that will give the conservative churches a way out. So they don't have to give up their church buildings. They don't have to give up their pastoral pensions, the conservative pastors. And they're going to try to work out an agreement, essentially a divorce. That's what it is. I was thinking about this the other day. And when you sit right down to it, it's a divorce agreement. The United Methodist Church is going through a divorce right now. And the sides cannot be reconciled because the issue of LGBTQ is the stumbling block. And the conservatives do not want to be in a church that ordains homosexuality because it's a sin. They don't want to be in a church that marries so-called gay couples because that's a sin. That's a double sin. That's not only is it a sin to be homosexual, it's a sin to profane marriage, the one man, one woman institution found in the Bible. Not only is it wrong to okay gay lifestyle, that's a sin, but then it's doubly wrong to profane marriage. That's a second sin. So the conservatives say, no, we won't abide by that. And the liberals in the United Methodist Church cannot abide by that. So they're going to come up with a really clever agreement so that the conservatives can leave. And so they're going to spin it, though. They're going to tell the world that this is because of those bad conservatives. They're not tolerant, and they're not loving, and they're judgmental, and they're going to lay all the blame for the split on the conservatives. But let's get into this article deeper, and we'll find out that we really are facing a propaganda campaign when it comes to the liberals in the church wanting to lay the blame to the conservatives. Leaders of Methodist colleges welcomed a recent proposal. All the leaders? It makes the impression that it's all the leaders of all the Methodist colleges welcome a recent proposal to split the United Methodist Church as a possible resolution to conflict over whether to remain affiliated with the church after it moved last year to strengthen prohibitions on the ordination of LGBT individuals and performance of same-sex marriages. So at the General Conference of the United Methodist Church, the liberals have been pushing this gay marriage agenda, gay ordination agenda for years and years and years. So every time it comes up, the General Conference votes it down. Okay? Because it's not in keeping with Christian faith. It's not in keeping with the historic Christian faith. And so the worldwide body of Methodists have voted this down every single time. And the liberal, progressivist, so-called gay lobby in the United Methodist Church cannot abide by that decision. Just cannot tolerate that. So they've been working hard to come up with a way that they can have their own way, and they've finally offered a proposal to the conservative churches, and that is that there would be a split in the Methodist Church. They're willing to split the Methodist Church. The gay lobby in the church is willing to split the church in the United Methodist Church to get their way. And then they're going to roll it over on the conservatives and say it's because those conservatives are not tolerant and loving and accepting of everyone. Yeah. Okay. The proposal to separate the church announced on Friday would allow for the spin-off of a traditionalist Methodist church in question marks, because this author doesn't believe that there really is a traditionalist legitimate branch. They want to say that that's just conservatives being stubborn. So they put quotation marks. Spin-off traditionalist Methodist denomination while enabling a new U.S. regional conference of the UMC to repeal the LGBT-related prohibitions. Methodist colleges and seminaries. Now, this is what I have been asking all along. When we first heard this article, this news coming from all kinds of sources a couple of weeks ago, my first question in my mind was, what about seminaries like Asbury? What about Bible-believing, traditional, historic, evangelical, denominational seminaries and colleges? What about them? What will they do? And who will they affiliate with? Methodist colleges and seminaries broadly oppose the restrictions on LGBT clergy and the same-sex marriages. Okay, the author is saying that most of the colleges, which are liberal now at this point, because, of course, if you want to be hip and cool and have a seat at the table in academia, you have to buy into the secular agenda, the materialistic, godless, immoral agenda. So most of the Methodist colleges, these little independent colleges all around the country, are liberal. And most of the United Methodist seminaries across the country are liberal. So it is true that most of the Methodist colleges and seminaries oppose restrictions on LGBT clergy and same-sex marriage because they're liberal. But there are not a lot, but there are some very strong evangelical United Methodist institutions like Asbury Seminary and some colleges that don't want to see LGBT clergy and same-sex marriage permitted in the United Methodist Church. 3 institutions, Baldwin Wallace University, Randolph College, and the University of Mount Union, formally disaffiliated, describing the church's stance on LGBTQ issues as incompatible with their own institutional value of inclusion and non-discrimination. So these are the liberal colleges that said, because the United Methodist Church will not officially embrace the whole sexual perversity revolution, we won't be a part of it because we're so progressive. So these are liberal colleges who are so liberal that they can't even stay in the liberal United Methodist Church. If the separation protocol is approved at the church's general conference in May, it will likely prevent other colleges from also disaffiliating with the UMC, Methodist College leaders said. So the other liberal colleges and seminaries won't have to quit like these other 3, because then there will be this large liberal United Methodist Church that they can feel comfortable in. That's what the author's saying. If the separation protocol is approved at the church's general conference in May, it will likely prevent other colleges from disaffiliating. Okay. There is a widespread hope among Methodist College presidents that this proposal resolution will be adopted. Ohio Wesleyan previously requested a postponement of its decennial site visit by the church's university senate, a condition for continued affiliation, in hopes that a resolution would be achieved that would preserve United Methodist Church as a fully inclusive institution, and thus one that Ohio Wesleyan would wish to remain affiliated. So Ohio Wesleyan is a liberal college, and they're mad because the United Methodist Church as a whole has not embraced the whole LGBTQ revolution. This proposed resolution seems to do that. Okay, so it will give them a denomination in which they can feel comfortable being liberal in. Jones added, however, the anxiety that I hear among the presidents who are in the regions of the country where the majority of Methodists would choose to not remain United Methodist, but move away with the traditionalist denomination, and the presidents of colleges in those regions are feeling an anxiety that the rest of us don't feel as strongly. Yeah, that's like Asbury Seminary. The president of Asbury Seminary is probably a little anxious right now, knowing, okay, well, what's going to happen to us? Are we going to have students come from the more liberal denomination? Are we going to have students come who are part of the other more liberal? Are they going to transfer in from other liberal colleges in the United Methodist Church? What is the future hold for us, since we have been, in some sense, marginalized by the denomination, the larger denomination, which is not, will be split now into 2 branches. Methodist College leaders have publicly spoken in a unified voice in calling for more inclusive policies within the church. I don't believe that Asbury Seminary president and some of the conservative colleges have called for a unified voice for more inclusion of the sexual perversion practices of the LGBTQ lobby. No. So that's an untruth. The 93 college presidents in attendance for a meeting of the National Association of Schools and Colleges of the United Methodist Church in January 2019 unanimously issued a statement opposing the church's adoption of new restrictions on LGBT clergy and same-sex marriage. Unanimously? So let me get this right. The conservative colleges and the conservative seminaries at this meeting, those presidents voted opposing the church's adoption or opposing the church's maintenance of the biblical moral standards for clergy and marriage? No. I don't believe that. I don't believe that the Asbury Seminary president voted to open the doors to LGBT clergy and same-sex marriage. I don't believe that. I believe this is a total misrepresentation. I don't believe it was unanimous. Unanimously issued a statement. Was the vote unanimous, or was it that some abstained from the vote? There's something there that's not being said, because you cannot get a conservative college or a conservative seminary to vote in favor of ordaining LGBT clergy and same-sex marriage and still be a conservative seminary and college. I don't believe that this is an accurate report. The leaders of the 13 theological schools also unanimously opposed the restrictions which were approved by a vote of the church's General Conference. So the leaders of the 13, so that would include Asbury Seminary, and the president there voted to remove restrictions on LGBTQ clergy and same-sex marriage? If that is the case, if the president of Asbury Seminary in Wilmington, Kentucky, which is supposed to be an evangelical Christian Bible-believing seminary, if that president actually voted, like this article says, to oppose the restrictions and allow for LGBT gay clergy and gay marriage, then it's not a conservative seminary anymore. So I don't know what, and if that is not a conservative seminary anymore, then there are no conservative seminaries in the Methodist Church, and there are no conservative colleges in the Methodist Church. So even if it splits, then basically what it's saying is all of the seminaries and all of the colleges will be going with the liberal body. Is that what it's meaning? Because that's pretty much the implication of if the presidents of all the seminaries and all the colleges voted to remove the restrictions for ordination of gay people and same-sex marriage, then they are not conservative. Even the conservatives, so-called conservative, are not conservative. The presidents feel like the action February 2019 put us in a situation of making a determination regarding the affiliation of the church. The feeling was that the policies and penalties that were associated with it really were a form of discrimination. The United Methodist Higher Education stands for inclusiveness and fair treatment of all. What about standing for traditional biblical morality? Miller said that in addition to the 3 institutions that were disaffiliated, the liberal ones, at least 12, including his own, put their relationship with the church on hold in hopes that there would be an amicable resolution at this year's General Conference. Okay. So, according to, at the meeting on January 4th, 85 college presidents signed a statement endorsing the creation of the U.S. Conference of Methodist Church, which is one aspect of the proposed separation protocol. Miller said this step would bring renewed hope to our schools for a future United Methodist Church that supports that kind of open and inclusive environment that's so vital for our campuses and the work that we do to shape principled leaders of the future. Principled leaders of the future. You mean unprincipled leaders of the future? If you're going to open the church up to a biblical sin, if you're going to open up the church to sexual perversity and profane marriage, you cannot talk about principled leaders that you're seeking to train, because you're violating the very principles upon which Christianity stands, which is biblical revelation. If the Bible cannot define what sin is, then you don't have any principles upon which to build principal leaders in the future. A lot of things can happen between January and May when the church's general conference meets, but we are very encouraged and supportive of the protocol that came from the mediation. Miller noted, however, that if a separation is reached, the church that emerges will be smaller, and the Methodist affiliated colleges will likely receive less financial support from the church, which is true. And while it's clear that Methodist higher education institutions as a whole support more inclusive church policies, Miller said, about 5 Methodist affiliated institutions may choose to depart the United Methodist and affiliate with the traditional Methodist denomination after its establishment. About 5, so 5 Methodist affiliates. I wonder which ones those are. Doesn't name it. But if you have Asbury Seminary president voting to remove the restrictions against gay marriage and against gay clergy, if he's already on record as for removing any restrictions, then why would he want to then affiliate his seminary with the traditionalist Methodist new denomination that's formed? Doesn't seem to make much sense. So there's a lot of confusion here, I think, on the part of even this writer. I wish he had actually mentioned those institutions instead of talk in vague and general terms here. While the presidents of those institutions are strongly aligned with us on the statement and position, they understand that some of the characteristics of their own institutions may lead them to be with the new denomination. Some of the characteristics, in other words, their alumni, their professors, the donors, things like that. And that's where it's going to come in to be tricky with Asbury Seminary, because it's supposed to be an evangelical conservative denomination school. So it should be interesting. It looks like I'm not going to have enough time in this program to look at the rest of the article, but we'll pick that up in another program, the next one probably. So I hope this has been a helpful insight. We need to pray for the Methodist Church in the United States and around the world. We need to pray that it will come back to its senses and come back to the gospel and come back to the Bible and stand for truth instead of caving into the secular world. Well, see you back next week on another edition of Christ and Culture. God bless.